This is the absolute big bad beast, the top of the top of the top line for the iPhone lineup. In fact, the rest of the smartphone community looks up, stands up and takes notice in terms of what's come in this phone. So what's changed with this particular device? I'm holding the iPhone 16 Pro Max in desert titanium color. Let's really ogle at it for a few seconds, play a little sequence, a cinematic one, and then I'll tell you more about this device. Now you've seen enough visuals of this device. Let me tell you a little bit more. The first thing you notice when you're holding this in your hand and comparing it to last year's 15 Pro Max, it does feel a little heavier. And I'm certain it is heavier by a few grams. That's also because of some of the hardware upgrades and the material used on this particular device. But desert titanium looks nice. I'm a fan of their blues over the years, the blues and purples, but that doesn't come in the Pro Max this time. They're very subtle colors. But what else happens under the hood? There's an A18 Pro. So if you speak of the standard iPhone 16, it comes with an A18. But in the same year and generation, there is a souped up version of that chipset, Apple Silicon with A18 Pro. That means it is capable of things that perhaps ordinary laptops can't even do. It's capable of things that the iPad can do. That's the power of Apple Silicon. I've edited so much of Tech Today and all the short form content you see on my 15 Pro Max. So if this is an upgrade, maybe by 20, 30, 40%, you can imagine what this can do. It's safe to say something we've experienced while using this phone. It is the best battery life on an iPhone by far. That's primarily because of two reasons. One, because of Apple Silicon. The chip does a great job with the A18 Pro. It's also because of iOS 18. That's, by the way, live, and we've given you all the disclaimers and the steps and how to on the Tech Today website. That's www.techtoday.in. Plug is over. Now we plug into what's happening with the 16 Pro Max. Great battery life. With the camera, you get all those functions with the camera controls, which work surprisingly well. I was a little shaky when I was using this in Cupertino, but I don't know whether it's literally the same feature, but maybe I'm more confident using it here in the Tech Today studio, and I have had time to make mistakes. So all the features you can use here. You can adjust the exposure, the depth of field. I'm doing that right now of our camera team sat in front of me. You can change which camera you're using. You can change the styles on these iPhones and even the tone in the photograph. The real trick, and there's only one trick with this new camera control button, don't leave it. Keep your finger there. Double taps will work, single taps will work, and then it works just like a trackpad on a Mac. This is a real pro feature which comes on both the standard iPhones and the Pro phones. So after this launch, one thing is clear, Apple isn't launching a foldable anytime soon. But what they have done, perhaps to make their users feel much better, is give us more real estate. This is the biggest iPhone ever, 6.9 inches, nearly 7 inches on this screen. And how you can tell that, and you really can tell the difference between the 15 Pro Max from last year and this year's model, is if you place them together like this. You can see right here, all right? It's already getting into airdrop mode, but you can see it's significantly bigger. It is also a little heavier, and it feels really nice to hold in the hand. So although it is bigger, I don't know what they've done, what magic the wizards have done over there. It feels really cool to hold. But of course, it's A18 Pro, and everyone who's upgrading to the 16 lineup or asking me about upgrading would want Apple Intelligence. Apple Intelligence is a product that is essentially going to take on what Pixel is doing with Gemini or what Samsung Galaxy is doing with Galaxy AI, and we'll get to that comparison in a bit. This particular phone will obviously come with Apple Intelligence running on its A18 Pro. A lot of on-device features. I'm waiting in the next few months for when that ChatGPT integration really comes in to understand how that works. I've seen it a couple of months ago in terms of some of the demos that Apple has showed us, but I want to see how it is as a use case when you and I use it on an everyday basis. I personally use ChatGPT all the time. Even sometimes when you're really bored and you're a little lonely, you have these conversations with ChatGPT, but now we can have them on this particular device in the months to come. That feature has not come yet. ChatGPT integration with all the privacy and security safeguards comes in the next few months. But one thing that this particular device is really grabbing the headlines for, especially here in India, is that it has gotten cheaper. Let me explain how that works. Usually it's about the features of this device. The features now are a given because this is the absolute top dollar flagship marquee device, but it's gotten 15,000 rupees cheaper. The Pro and Pro Max models have gotten cheaper in India. That's obviously because of the change and reduction in duties. They're also being assembled now here in India, and it's great to see that all these benefits are being passed on to consumers. That also means that if you've been asking your uncles and aunts to purchase the iPhone, especially the Pro models from the US or Dubai, firstly, that's not advisable because you don't even get the SIM tray and there's a whole bunch of issues. You ideally shouldn't be doing that. If you're buying it in India now, it is much cheaper. So the gap has also gotten much closer. And if you add all the cashbacks and discounts, we've also got a piece on the Tech Today website about how it doesn't make sense to go to Dubai, and all of that calculation of enjoying a holiday with the price difference has all been hit to a large extent because of that price reduction. It's also gotten a lot more popular. So this is the device that you want to go for if you want the absolute creme de la creme of the Apple ecosystem. Now, of course, we've been toying with the camera, and while we travel for all of our shoots, we have some great shots that I want to show you in terms of camera samples, what this phone is capable of. But let me tell you, the iPhone Pro lineup for the past few years has been the one-stop shop for content creators, photo and video. But this year, with audio mix, a feature that I've been testing a lot, I've realized that I don't need to carry my mic everywhere because this can do a great job. There's options like in-frame, studio as well if you want a podcast style like audio, cinematic. It will drown out all the surround sound and really focus on what is in frame or whatever setting you choose. That is a feature which comes with software, but on the Pro models, there is a difference from the standard models. This comes with 4 studio mics, which are placed around the iPhone, which give you much better quality sound than even its younger brother, the iPhone 16. I'm going to hold it straight up for you. Should you upgrade to the 16 Pro or 16 Pro Max? By the way, the 16 Pro and Pro Max are exactly the same when it comes to all its features, the camera as well. You have that 5x telephoto on both these devices. The battery and screen size differ obviously because they are 2 different variants, but everything else is the same. Now, my take is if you have an iPhone older than the 15 Pro Max, perhaps the 14 Pro or Pro Max, or any of these devices, 13, 12, across their entire lineup, then you can consider upgrading to this device or the smaller Pro. I think even the Pro has gotten a lot bigger in terms of screen size, but I think this is a worthy upgrade. So that's a fairly easy verdict to give. But what if you own a 15 Pro Max like me? Do you need to upgrade? Absolutely not. This is a fantastic camera. It is also a little smaller and lighter. I prefer the color on the 15 Pro Max, and it comes with Apple Intelligence because this is a worthy, very competent, formidable chipset on the inside. So anything older than a 15 Pro or Pro Max, you can consider upgrading. But if you have this, well, let's wait for next year. This is your first look at the 16 Pro Max. But now's where this segment takes a little bit of an Ask Aayush sort of a turn because of the number of you who've been asking me about how the iPhone stacks up against Samsung's S24 Ultra, most importantly, the Pixel 9 Pro XL. Each of these devices is a worthy contender for the top spot, but let me explain to you what the features are like, then you can make that decision for yourselves. First things first, the iPhone 16 Pro Max is now the biggest screen you get on any flagship. It's a 6.9-inch screen. The others are at 6.8 inch. Now, this is the first time that the iPhone is bigger than the other flagship phones. Now, in terms of the outer frame, the iPhone and Samsung come in this titanium build. They keep competing with each other, but you have the Google Pixel, which has an aluminium build, so it feels different to hold as well. And of course, it makes a difference in terms of how much you can pack at that particular weight. What if you're out on a sunny day with these devices and you want to be able to read what's on your screen? Then there's a factor called peak brightness, and how many nits of peak brightness determines it. Strangely, it is the Pixel with the maximum amount of peak brightness at 3000 nits. After that, it is the Samsung at 2600 nits. So with this gorgeous display, you'll still not be able to get as bright an image as the Pixel. The new iPhone is at 2000 nits of peak brightness. Honestly, these are just numbers. You take it out like we have into the outdoors and you can see fairly well with all of them. The Pixel is notably well, a much brighter display. Now, all three phones come with a 120Hz display, LTPO, and IP68 water and dust resistance. But let's talk about performance-wise, iPhone versus Pixel versus Samsung. This one comes with the A18 Pro. This is G4, their Tensor chipset. And the Samsung comes with the omnipotent Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. In terms of performance, it's not just the chipset, it's also how the software and other things are integrated within the phone. There is nothing that beats what the iPhone can do, what Silicon has managed to do with this particular device, and how iOS 18 works. It rarely overheats, it rarely hangs, all the apps work seamlessly, and it works within an ecosystem almost flawlessly. After that, of course, it is the Samsung with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, and then it is the Google Pixel in terms of what we can do. We're living in 2024, and all of these brands have officially jumped onto the AI bandwagon. Apple last with Apple Intelligence, but very promising in terms of its potential. The only issue is it's rolling out very slowly, so it's not easy to compare the three. Very promising in terms of what Apple Intelligence and Siri promise, but right now it is still being rolled out. There's Galaxy AI on Samsung, which has been hit or miss. In the beginning, it seemed very promising. It was the first to come up with those features. We have to give them that. But ever since then, a lot of those features have remained mere party tricks. And there's a lot of third-party apps that can do what a lot of those features would have promised. It's the Pixel, which is not too old, with Gemini, which I think is the clear winner at this point in the AI department. Absolutely amazing in terms of what Gemini Live can do. And strangely, even though Apple is facing issues with Apple Intelligence in the EU, and that's a whole story for another day, you can actually download Gemini and use it on either of these devices. AI features-wise, it's the Pixel hands down, which is winning for now in the AI race. What about cameras and optimization? Let me give you the specs and then I'll give you my take. If you talk about cameras, the Pixel and the iPhone come with 3 cameras each, main, ultra-wide and telephoto, whereas the Samsung has one extra, a second telephoto camera, which lets it do the super 100x zoom. But we've had a lot of memes on zooming into the moon and what it does with that image. But honestly, that 100x zoom is a feature only available on the Samsung devices. But obviously those camera specs are only on paper. I judge these devices as a content creator in terms of how good the output is when I post things on social media. On the Samsung, I don't know whether it's about the lack of optimization, but the content seems very blurry and it's a little grainy as well at times. On the iPhone, it's always been flawless. This is a device made for content creators. So all in all, photos look great on the Pixel, but if you want a one-stop shop, it's always and always the iPhone. Also, if you're not really a fan of the output of a traditional iPhone, those photographic styles now that you can access even from the camera control button are something worth experimenting with. So if you want to play around with that image, you can also do that, by the way, in post. A lot of the features have come to the Photos app on the iPhone lineup, the 16 lineup, and that's something you should experiment with as well. Now, all 3 phones have fantastic battery lives compared to other devices. If you're looking at the Samsung, it has the fastest charging out of the 3 with 45 watts, followed by Pixel's 37 watts. And then, of course, you have the iPhone, which is third in that particular debate. But what about the price? And this is where things get interesting. Of course, we know that the iPhone now costs 1,44,900, this particular 16 Pro Max. The Samsung S24 Ultra costs nearly 1,22,000 rupees. But the real shocker is that a device which could have been loved as the stock Android king, the Pixel lineup, including the Fold, are incredibly overpriced in terms of what they are giving you. Great phones, but very, very expensive. This particular device, the 9 Pro XL, costs 1,25,000 rupees. That makes it more expensive than the Samsung, which honestly has better hardware in terms of some of the things that are under the hood. So all in all, if you're comparing all of these devices, the iPhone is definitely a good bang for your buck, but it is a bit more expensive. The Pixel is a great device if you want stock Android, and if you're on the Samsung ecosystem, the Samsungs have been consistent with that. But if you're looking at the one undisputed king, if you're a content creator, if you want a power device, if you want to be in an ecosystem, and little by little you want to really experiment with the world of AI, it has to be an iPhone.